Can you believe it, Leafs Nation? After months of speculation, after all the rumors and the hope that Mikko Rantanen could be the missing piece to finally push us over the top, he's gone. Signed an 8-year, $96 million deal with the Dallas Stars. And we're left asking the brutal question. Did Brad Treliving just let the perfect player slip through our fingers because he refused to pay the price? Or was this always a pipe dream that was never going to happen? All right, folks, settle in. Because we need to have a serious, honest, and potentially painful conversation about what just happened with Mikko Rantanen and the Toronto Maple Leafs. For months, the NHL rumor mill has been churning with speculation about Rantanen's future. Ever since a surprising trade to Carolina Hurricanes back in January of 2025, his name has been at the center of every trade deadline discussion, every insider report, and every fan forum debate. And throughout all of that noise, one name kept popping up as a potential destination: the Toronto Maple Leafs. The idea was tantalizing. A legitimate superstar, a proven playoff performer, a player who could slot in alongside Auston Matthews and William Nylander and instantly transform Toronto's offense. But now, the dream is dead. Rantanen is a Dallas Star, and we're left to pick up the pieces and figure out what went wrong. Let's rewind and understand the full context of this saga, because the details matter. Mikko Rantanen, the 29-year-old Finnish winger, has been one of the most consistently elite offensive players in the NHL for years. During his time with the Colorado Avalanche, he was a perennial point-per-game player, a key contributor to their Stanley Cup victory, and a player who thrived in the biggest moments. He's a 6'4", 215-pound power forward with elite skill, a lethal shot, exceptional vision, and the kind of two-way game that makes him valuable in all situations. He's a complete package, the kind of player that every contender dreams of adding. When the Avalanche traded him to the Carolina Hurricanes in January 2025, it sent shockwaves through the league. The initial expectation was that Carolina, a perennial contender, would sign Rantanen to a long-term extension and make him a cornerstone of their franchise for years to come. But that's not what happened. Rantanen declined Carolina's offer for a long-term contract, which immediately threw his future into uncertainty. Why would a player turn down a lucrative extension from a contending team? The most likely explanation: he wanted to explore his options, to see what other teams would be willing to offer, and to potentially land in a situation that he felt gave him the best chance to win another Stanley Cup while also maximizing his financial security. This is where the Toronto Maple Leafs enter the picture. According to NHL insider Elliotte Friedman, who reported extensively on the situation through podcasts and articles, the Maple Leafs were very interested in acquiring Rantanen. They saw him as a fundamental piece for a strong playoff push, a player who could finally give them the elite, proven winger they've been desperately searching for. The idea of Rantanen playing alongside Auston Matthews was mouth-watering for Leafs fans. Imagine that top line: Rantanen, Matthews, Nylander. That's 3 legitimate superstars, 3 players capable of taking over games, and a line that would be virtually impossible to defend against. But here's the critical detail that Friedman emphasized. Toronto's interest was primarily viewed as a rental situation, a short-term acquisition for a playoff run. Why? Because of the salary cap. The Maple Leafs, as always, are operating with minimal cap flexibility. They have significant money tied up in their core four, and adding Rantanen's current cap hit, let alone signing him to a massive long-term extension, would require serious financial gymnastics. The implication was clear. Toronto could potentially acquire Rantanen for a playoff run, but they likely couldn't afford to sign him long-term. They'd be betting on a few months of elite production, hoping it would be enough to finally break through and win the Stanley Cup, and then they have to let him walk in free agency. That's a huge gamble. You're giving up valuable assets, prospects, draft picks, potentially even roster players, for a player you can only keep for a few months. If it works, if Rantanen leads you to a championship, it's worth it. But if it doesn't, if you lose in the first or second round, you just mortgage your future for nothing. That's the kind of high-stakes decision that defines general managers' legacies. But then, reality took a completely different turn. And this is where the story gets painful for Leafs fans. Mikko Rantanen was traded to the Dallas Stars. And not only did the Stars acquire him, they immediately signed him to an 8-year, $96 million contract extension, with an average annual value of $12 million. That's a massive commitment, both in terms of years and dollars. The Stars went all in, betting that Rantanen will remain an elite player for the next 8 years, and that his presence will help him compete for multiple Stanley Cups. This move shocked many, including Leafs fans who have been holding out hope that Rantanen would somehow end up in Toronto. According to reliable sources, the Maple Leafs were actually one of 4 teams that Rantanen was willing to sign with long-term. That's significant. It means Rantanen saw Toronto as a desirable destination, a place where he could win and be happy. But despite that willingness, despite the mutual interest, the deal never happened. Why? The price was too high. The Carolina Hurricanes, who were acting as the intermediary in this trade, demanded a package that included Matthew Knies and multiple high draft picks. For Brad Treliving and the Maple Leafs, that was a bridge too far. Knies is a young, promising power forward who has shown flashes of becoming a legitimate top 6 player. He's cost-controlled, he's physical, and he fits the identity that Craig Berube is trying to build. Giving him up, along with multiple first-round picks, for a player who would only be a rental or would require a massive contract extension that Toronto couldn't afford, was deemed too risky. So, despite the intense interest and the prolonged negotiations, Mikko Rantanen ended up signing a long-term commitment with the Dallas Stars, ending all speculation about his arrival in Toronto. And now, Leafs Nation is left to grapple with the painful reality. We had a chance to acquire one of the best players in the NHL, a player who was willing to come here, and we didn't pull the trigger. This chapter in Mikko Rantanen's career is a perfect example of how intense and unpredictable NHL negotiations can be, involving multiple teams and complex strategies around roster management and finances. For the Maple Leafs, the attempt to bring in a talent of this caliber clearly indicated their ambition to reinforce the team for a Stanley Cup run, even though financial limitations ultimately prevented that possibility. For the Dallas Stars, the operation was a significant coup, bringing one of the league's most talented players into a medium and long-term project. But here's the question that's tearing Leafs Nation apart right now. Did Brad Treliving make the right decision? Should he have paid the price? Matthew Knies, multiple first-round picks, and committed to a $12 million contract extension to land Mikko Rantanen? Or was he right to walk away, to protect the future assets and maintain financial flexibility? Let's examine both sides. The argument for making the trade is straightforward. Mikko Rantanen is a proven, elite superstar who could have genuinely transformed Toronto's offense and given them a legitimate chance to win the Stanley Cup this year. He's the kind of player who elevates everyone around him, who performs in the biggest moments, and who brings championship experience. If acquiring him meant giving up Matthew Knies and some draft picks, so be it. You're in win-now mode, and you need to be willing to pay the price for elite talent. Championships aren't won by hoarding prospects. They're won by acquiring the best players available and going all in. The argument against making the trade is equally compelling. Matthew Knies is a young, cost-controlled asset who fits the team's identity and could be a key piece for years to come. Giving him up, along with multiple first-round picks, for a player who would either be a rental or would require a massive contract extension that cripples your cap flexibility, is too risky. What if Rantanen gets injured? What if the chemistry doesn't work? What if you still lose in the playoffs? Then you've mortgaged your future for nothing. Better be patient, to build to the draft and development, and to make smart, calculated moves rather than desperate, all-in gambles. Both arguments have merit, and that's what makes the situation so frustrating. There's no clear right answer. It's a judgment call, a bet on the present versus the future, and Brad Treliving made his choice. He chose to protect Matthew Knies and the draft picks, to maintain financial flexibility, and pursue other options. Whether that was the right decision will only be determined by how the rest of this season and the next few years unfold. For now, Mikko Rantanen is a Dallas Star, and the Maple Leafs are left to continue their search for that elusive missing piece. The dream of Rantanen in blue and white is dead, and Leafs Nation has to move on. But the questions will linger. What if we had paid the price? What if Rantanen was the one who could have finally led us to the promised land? We'll never know, and that's the most painful part of all. What do you think, Leafs Nation? Should Brad Treliving have pulled the trigger and traded for Mikko Rantanen? even if it meant giving up Matthew Knies and multiple first-round picks? Or was he right to walk away and protect the team's future assets? And how frustrated are you that we let another elite player slip through our fingers? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear all your perspectives on this incredibly painful situation. And if you want to stay on top of every trade rumor, every potential acquisition, and every breaking news story as the NHL season unfolds, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We'll be here breaking down every significant development, and you won't want to miss a single update as we continue to chase that ultimate prize,